Now, here's a story for you. People in Haverhill, or Haverhill, if you like, have been lobbying St Edmundsbury Council to give their town more money. The row basically centres over a pot of money called the Council Tax Support Grant. This is money handed over to town and parish councils by local authorities, but St Edmundsbury Borough Council says budget cuts mean they've had to phase out the grant over the next 4 years. Now, Haverhill Town Council argues the money is rightfully theirs. They'd like to see the grant restored and make sure the cash gets spent on the town. Roger Andre is Town Mayor of Haverhill. I hope I've summed that story up correctly, Roger. This is basically about just over £32,000 a year, isn't it, that Haverhill feels is rightfully theirs. St Edmundsbury says they can't afford it.
Absolutely, yes, Hadley. It's really worked brilliant that you've managed to sum it up. It's a really complex issue. When council tax benefits system changed, they changed the rules about who they count as paying council tax, and people who are receiving benefit are removed from the figures. So effectively, the tax base, that's the number of people in our community who share the council tax, or the number of properties, reduced by the number of people whose properties were subject to council tax benefit. As a result of that, we move from, there's a figure equivalent band D, all the houses in the community are converted to an equivalence to a band D, which is the average of the council tax bands. We move from 8,000 of those, 8,078, immediately in 1 year to 6,924, which means when we've arrived at the budget we need to run the town council and its activities, instead of dividing it by 8,078, we now have to divide it by 6,924. The Department for Communities and Local Government, DCLG, recognised this would be a problem, and they provided funding to authorities. In our case, that funding amounted to 128,933. And in the first year of that, we were paid that by St Edmundsbury. But for this year, they've decided to start reducing it, and they decided to take it over 4 years. So they've reduced our 128,933 by 32k for this year.
If you got the £32,000, Roger, what would you spend it on?
We'll spend it on the activities and services that we provide for our local community. An increasing problem, as council cuts elsewhere, both Suffolk County Council and St Edmundsbury Borough Council have been withdrawing their services, and we've been having to make them up. If you think about things like community centres, they're pulling out community centres. Our community needs its community centres. They're well used. So we're supporting community centres where the borough have withdrawn. We're supporting youth activities where youth activities have been withdrawn by both county and borough.
So this £32,000, if you had it, because some people might think, well, it just sounds like, it's a lot of money to me, but it might sound like on a council level a drop in the ocean. But you say that if you had got this money, it would all be well spent.
Absolutely, and the point isn't about whether we spend it well or about whether we can afford it, whether they can afford it. This is money that's provided by central government to local authorities to pass on to towns and parishes.
Now, you got a petition together, 2,500 signatories, all calling for the money to be reinstated by St Edmundsbury. How was that petition received?
We presented a petition to the Mayor, Councillor Everett, on Monday, and Councillor Griffiths, the leader of the council, responded by suggesting that we should go away. He actually accused Haverhill residents of carping on and went on and on and on about various investment things that have been going on in Haverhill over many years.
But if they can't afford to give you the money, then what's to be done?
It's not their money to not be able to afford. The money's been given to them by the government to give to us. Not just us and parish councils. This doesn't just affect us, this affects us and all the parish councils across the borough.
So what's to be done?
What's to be done is that people will keep pressing for it, will keep arguing for it. We're saying that in due course, we understand the economics of it all. In due course, our tax base will catch up again. We're building houses in Haverhill at an historically unconsidered rate. We've never built as many houses as we are now. But it takes a while for them to come online in terms of hitting the tax base. In a couple of years' time, we could revisit this decision, and it may well be that we'll find that our tax base is restored to the 8,000 that it was previously, and the problem's gone away. But in the intervening 2 years, we lose 32,000 this year, and we will lose 64,000 next year.
So that the
That's
fight, if you like,
£96,000 of our money gone.
the fight, if you like, to get it back continues, does it?
It does indeed, but it clearly won't continue with the leader of the Borough Council because he thinks we're just carping on.
All right, well, we'll speak to St Edmundsbury later on in the programme. Roger Andre, Mayor of Haverhill, thanks very much for getting in touch today. Later in the programme, as I say, we'll hear from St Edmundsbury about their position. Now, we mentioned earlier on a dispute, if you like, between Haverhill Town Council and St Edmundsbury Borough Council. Now, Haverhill Town Council is lobbying, which I can't say, the Borough Council over money, which they say should be coming to them. The Borough is reducing its support grant to the town. That's angered some people in Haverhill. Earlier I spoke to the Mayor, Roger Andre, who explained how the money might have been spent.
We spend it on the activities and services that we provide for our local community. An increasing problem as council cuts elsewhere, both Suffolk County Council and St Edmundsbury Borough Council have been withdrawing their services, and we've been having to make them up. If you think about things like community centres, they're pulling out of community centres. Our community needs its community centres, they're well used, so we're supporting community centres where the borough have withdrawn.
Councillor David Ray, Cabinet Member for Resources at St Edmundsbury Borough Council, joins me now on the line. Councillor Ray, good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
So, £32,000 a year. The people in Haverhill said this money should be coming to them. You're saying, as I understand it, no, we can't afford to do that anymore. So what's to be done?
Well, Ethel, thank you very much. Firstly, a little background for many of your listeners who perhaps weren't listening to your debate earlier on, an hour or so ago. Benefit reform from the 1st of April last year resulted in a reduction in the effective number of households paying council tax, with a consequent reduction in the council tax received by the county council, the police, the district council, the borough and the town and parish councils. And the government decided to compensate for this last year with a council tax support grant, which is the money we're talking about. And this grant, given by central government last year to St Edmundsbury to pass on to town and parish councils, was £166,000. However, we calculated the shortfall to town and parish councils to be £192,000. So we topped up the grant with £26,000 of St Edmundsbury money so that the town and parish councils were compensated in full. Now, this year the government hasn't quantified the grant it included within the overall grant to district-level councils, which for St Edmundsbury has been reduced by 49% over 2 years. So we applied broadly the same reduction to the grant we passed on to town and parish councils, a 25% cut this year and a further 25% cut next year.
You see, what Haverhill is saying is that you've got the money from the government, it's due to them and parishes, why not hand it over? But you're saying you haven't got the money from the government.
Well, that's correct. You know, the overall money from the government has been cut. So we took a decision last year, which we passed on in good time to town and parish councils, to tell them exactly what we were going to give them.
So are they asking for money that's because my understanding of this whole dispute, which is scant, let's face it, was that this money is due to them, rightfully theirs, you're holding on to it, but you say you haven't had the money in the first place. That's
correct. Yeah. And this money, you know, it's only a transitional grant. The government introduced it to cushion the blow of the effects of the benefit changes on the council tax.
Has this been sufficiently well explained to the 2,500 people who signed a petition to try and get this £32,500 handed over to Haverhill Council?
Well, they didn't try and get me to sign the petition, so I don't know, how much they explained to the...
All right, then let me put this another way. Are you, as the Borough Council, informing people sufficiently well so that they can understand what they're signing up to?
Well, I mean, it's not an easy issue, Eppley. So we do our best to get messages across, but of course the details of the financial arrangements are not headline news in newspapers.
But you say you haven't had the money in the first place.
We haven't had the money. We are phasing it out gradually. What we have committed to is a review next year when we know what the government is going to give us for the following year. We know what the government has given us this year and is giving us next year. We don't know whether the government is going to cut out this council tax support grant completely or not, and what money we may or may not get from government.
Are you concerned that residents in Haverhill might miss out on whatever activities that this money would have been spent on?
Well, if they were to miss out on activities, I mean, picking up on something that Roger said.
That's the mayor who spoke to us earlier, yeah.
That's right, yes. I mean, Roger said, look, we're taking on community centres. I mean, I would question why Haverhill Town Council is funding the community centres. OK, St Edmundsbury funded them, but in the town, in all the villages that I'm associated with, the equivalent of a community centre is a village hall, and they are managed by volunteers, and when major expenditure is needed, then grants are applied for, and grants are available from St Edmundsbury and many other grant givers. So why should either the Borough Council or the Town Council pay to run community centres?
All right, perhaps.
And really, Haverhill needs to look. Yes, we don't want to lose facilities, we don't want to lose services, but in the financial situation we find ourselves in, we've got to find new ways of doing business and making sure that the facilities we need, the services we want continue, but not necessarily paid by all of us through our council tax.
All right, thanks for joining us this morning. Councillor David Ray, Cabinet Member for Resources at St Edmundsbury Borough Council.